Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being on the source. Tell us, who are you, sir, and what do you do?
Yes, my name is Ryan Fish. I live in the Minnesota area and I
Hmm,
work nationally as a principal talent acquisition recruiter and or sourcer.
nice, nice. Okay. Now, I know from a previous discussion we've had that you have a very interesting story to tell, an interesting recruiting story. Please, if you would, retell the story for the audience.
Thank you. Yes. Years ago, I worked for a large RPO that was supporting an organization on a global scale. Working with this organization, the global talent acquisition leader called me and told me that I should be very careful what I said because he had joined me into a conference with all of the VPs from around the organization.
Hmm.
They had been discussing an acquisition of a company in Saint Jean Richelieu, Quebec, in Canada.
Okay.
And although I sat on the US side, they wanted to see what I would do with this facility that they had purchased. And as they purchased it, their top six engineers walked off of the job. Over that year since that had happened, the recruiter that had been working on it had failed to fill any of the six roles.
Ouch.
And they were at a crucial point where they really needed to get those jobs filled.
Hmm.
So they asked me, what would I do if they came and said, we want to have all six roles filled in 5 weeks? So they were asking me to do what someone hadn't been able to do in a year in 5 weeks.
No
Well,
pressure. No
no
pressure.
pressure at all. No, yeah, no. So
Wow.
I actually recommended that they do it as an event. And in looking at that, how I ended up setting it up and doing this was there was a French English resource that was able to verify that each of the candidates we were looking at could fully read, write, and speak both in French and in English.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I also had another resource that in Canada, of course, there are very specific rules and laws around different types of tools that they can use. And they had a resource within the organization that I was able to work with that helped search and identify the candidates that we were looking at and do an initial screen to make sure that A, they fit, B, they'd be interested, and to alleviate some of the issues around compensation or some of those other benefits we had. I had them walk through all of that. If we were to extend an offer, this is what we would offer. And then if they met those criteria, I would have a short call with them to reiterate pay and benefits, run through some basic information. And from there, if they looked good, we would have them do a short introductory screen actually with the site. With this, we probably went through a good 40 or 50 interviews to get to our top 24 candidates. That was the top 4 people for each of the 6 jobs. Now, with those candidates, once they were identified and locked in for their position for the event, we sent out a very branded email that allowed us to be able to tell them more about the organization, show them pictures of the site, etc. And it also invited them to touch back with any questions they may have even prior to coming in. The day of the event, there was actually a 2-day event that we did. We did 12 of the 24 candidates representing the top 4 for 3 of the roles on day 1, and then the other 12 to represent the other 3 roles on day number 2. Each day, I took the interviewers to dinner, and we reviewed the candidates to gain consensus on whom they liked and who they may want to offer for the roles. They were so impressed. They actually said that all 24 of the candidates they would be willing to offer.
Wow.
And they struggled to find, who they wanted to offer, but eventually we came to a consensus. And at the end of each day and after these events, I extended the offers to the top candidate. The candidates, because of the time we took to make sure we, had done presentations, we regularly kept in contact with them prior to them coming into the interview. And we had already taken the whole comp piece out of the equation by saying this is what we were going to pay. The top 6 candidates, all 6 of those jobs, accepted on the spot.
Wow.
So we're successfully able in 5 weeks to fill 6 jobs in another country
Dude,
that hadn't been filled before. So
I gotta give you a hand clap on that one. That's really good.
Thank you.
That's a story worth bragging about.
Thank you. Yeah,
For sure.
it was really an accomplishment I'm very proud of. And out of that, because of my success, I was made manager over recruitment for all of the Canadian recruitment, all business lines. So
Nice.
that was my reward from the company after that as well. So I was very excited about that.
I like your idea about having an event. Why didn't the person before you do that? It did not occur to them, or what do you think?
I think they were looking at it as individual jobs, not a way to fill all 6 at one time. And I think they got buried in the minutia, so to speak, because each was a different type of engineer. This specific site had a testing lab, which was state of the art. Actually very unique in a lot of different ways, but it had access to tools and to chemicals and to all sorts of things that in many labs wouldn't even be possible. So it was a huge selling point from that standpoint, but I don't think he really went, or that recruiter didn't necessarily go down that path to, also create that excitement around what the lab actually could do.
Yeah. Did the it sounds like the company had a strong employer brand
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So that certainly helped. I'm thinking of other key points that other recruiters who are watching this that they can take away and maybe apply to the job they're looking for. So one thing I'm getting from you is having a hiring event could be one way to fill several jobs at once. And I like the way you stayed in touch with the candidates, so you kept in constant contact with them throughout. What other points do you think other recruiters can sort of glean from your story?
Well, the other thing is I didn't try to do it all myself. I recognized what I could do and what I couldn't do. I'm not an expert in French. I couldn't do that piece. So being able to engage somebody in the organization that was able to do that for me and be that resource was huge. I also didn't sit in Canada, and I didn't have access to a couple of the key systems that they use to find a lot of candidates.
Wow.
And knowing that they had more of that kind of, from the legal standpoint, what and who and how you need to do things to stay compliant, that partnership was key as well. So I really, it was a team effort, but the concept I came up with to be able to just kind of look at the different key pieces, break it down into smaller pieces, and really rely on my team to help me make sure that we stayed compliant, that we followed process, to make sure we wouldn't have any issues when everything was said and done.
Although you were wildly successful with this strategy, is there anything you would have done differently, knowing now what you knew then?
At this point, I think I probably would have focused even more as far as how we looked at some of the candidates. There was a bit of a learning curve on the front side where we weren't confirming certain details or pieces that later in the process became very clear and very easy for us to do. Now, with those candidates and trying to verify the different components with what the pay was and other things like that with benefits and stuff, we were able to go back to make sure that the people we originally spoke to didn't miss out on that, to make sure it wouldn't change our decision. But I also looked and wasn't assuming that the first 24 people we talked to would be who would go. I knew this was going to be a lot of people we would have to, talk to, a lot of people we'd have to reach out to, a lot of people we'd have to phone screen to really find those top candidates. And I really think that had a lot to do with the success of it. It was, being able to do that, to change any of that. If I knew now, or knew then what I know now, I think I would have maybe just consolidated it a little bit more, just to make sure that we're able to get through it quicker.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that wonderful story. If somebody wanted more information about you or wanted to reach out to you with additional questions, how can they find you online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Ryan Fish, MBA. And you can also be able to find on my website a number of links for other tools that may make them successful as well. So I've got a couple of Start Me pages that I've been partnering with Brett Feig to be able to do, and both from a diversity standpoint and referencing Shelley Stackrell's, Dean DeCosta's pages, and a number of other pros that are out there as well. There's definitely a lot of great information for everybody.
Great. For the convenience of all concerned, I'll put a link in the video description. Ryan Fish, merci, très bien, monsieur. Thank you for being on the
Merci.
Thank you for being on The Source.
Thank you.